here we are, Dr. Khan, or Sandra, if I may, having written together a book on jaws. When I'm an evolutionary biologist, why are we writing a book on jaws?
Well, we have an epidemic. We've observed that so many people have crooked teeth. And we started doing some research trying to find out what was going on. And the second part of the epidemic is the fact that some people are not having as restful sleep as they could. People are not sleeping well, and that is an epidemic that's going around. And this all traces down to the size of our jaws not being big enough to house all the teeth or to house the structures that allow us to breathe well at night. And we all know people that snore, and we all know people that have crooked teeth. So this is absolutely an epidemic. Having an evolutionary biologist involved in this project is very important because we want to know exactly why this problem is happening. We know that it's been getting worse and worse, especially in the last 50 years.
Well, why hasn't it been getting worse and worse in the last 50 years? What are those structures you're talking about that bother your sleeping?
Well, what we have is we have more crowding. People that are 50 years old know that 50 years ago, kids that were in school were not all going through braces, and we didn't have all these people worried about sleeping more and sleeping better and not waking up during their sleep with being short of breath. And we know that this is only getting worse as we have more benefits with civilization, but we're more comfortable with technology. And there is a history because when we look at older skulls, we look at older ways of living, and we talk to people like this, like evolutionary biologists, anthropologists, archaeologists, we can see that the remains that we find of hunter-gatherers are not having the crooked teeth that we have. They're not having the smaller jaws that we find today. And we can see that primitive people that live today with less technology, that live still in non-urban areas and they eat less processed food, they also have bigger jaws and they also have better sleep. So we want to have somebody that actually understands this, that has been studying the changes in humanity since we were hunter-gathering, since we developed agriculture, since we moved into cities. We want to know what's going on, and there's such an interesting history of what has led us to this epidemic.
Yeah, well, look, we've subjected humanity, a species that's hundreds of thousands of years old, in about 8,000 years to a huge environmental change. In relatively few generations, we have gone from hunter-gatherers, where, by the way, our colleague Richard Klein, who's the world's expert on fossil human beings, says he's never seen a hunter-gatherer skull with crooked teeth. There are no wisdom teeth. So we've had this huge environmental change from hunting and gathering to settling down to agriculture, and then to moving more and more to liquid diets. And that has made these huge changes. It's a change in our environment. It's a change that millions and now billions of people are undergoing. And the epidemic that Sandra has described is simply a result of that huge environmental change.
Yeah, we're not chewing enough. We're not breastfeeding long enough. We're not doing a lot of the things that we pre-programmed to be doing. Most of people that look at lifestyles and health, they consider food and the chemical composition, the nutritional components of food, important. And we have a lot of literature that has looked into that. But we really don't have much talking about how we're eating it or how much stress. And I'm talking about physical stress, like, if it's very stressful to breastfeed, you have to, stress your muscles, and having that strength or that force with your muscles, or something that has to have a lot of work to be chewed, like raw vegetables or a full apple. If we have food that requires a lot of work to be eaten, does that help our jaws? Does that help our development? It's a piece that's missing on the puzzle of what is causing a lot of misery and health issues in our society.
Well, one of the things that stunned me, having thought about a lot of issues in human evolution over a long time, was I didn't realize until I saw some pictures and some videos how much work a baby has to do to nurse as opposed to just drinking from a bottle. So that many women who are able to nurse decide, because they're working, to pump breast milk and have the breast milk later given by a caregiver in a bottle. And that doesn't require anywhere near the jaw muscle activity that a baby nursing does. Just a small example of how things can be right in front of you. It never dawned on me that we're moving towards a more and more soft, liquid diet. We're weaning our children to baby foods, and baby foods, mostly soups, pablum, things like that. Whereas, of course, when you're hunter-gatherers, you didn't have any baby food manufacturers, you had no way of getting pablum, you weaned the kids, maybe over a period of years, to things they had to chew. And chewing, damned important. Just think of what your kids would be like if you didn't allow them to walk until they were 12. Think of how their legs would develop. That's what we basically have with our jaws. Okay, there is an epidemic, the symptoms of which are crowded jaws, crooked teeth, that the cause of the epidemic is moving into civilization where, among other things, we no longer chew as much as we used to chew, and that makes our jaws develop smaller, not enough room for teeth and the tongue. That means, for example, that at night, when you lie back, the tongue may fall into your airway and cause you to snore, or worse yet, absolutely interrupt your sleep, which is a terrible stress. Interrupted sleep can lead to things like heart disease. So what appears to be simply an appearance thing of crooked teeth can actually be a symptom that you're moving towards heart disease.
Well, personal stories are so important in everything that humans come up with, because the personal story sometimes guides us to look at things in a different angle. And for me, when my own child was growing up, I realized that his jaws weren't growing the way they were supposed to. He was starting to snore. Snoring should be a red flag. I did know that snoring wasn't good for my baby, but I didn't really know what I had done wrong. And being a working mother, I pumped my breast milk. I had been informed that the chemical composition and what was in breast milk was the most important thing, but I thought I could go to work and leave him a bottle with a caretaker or with my husband, and that would be good enough. And so I bypassed a lot of the breastfeeding with my child, and I think that was one of the first things that brought him to have these issues, because he really didn't put in the work. And then from that, of course, being a new mom, I heard from everybody, you give him mush, you give him soft foods, and you cook the food and you mash it. And I started feeding him with a spoon, with a baby spoon. And you feed the baby and the food gets all over the face, and then you clean it up and you push it in again. And sometimes the kids, their tongue, their system is not ready to be eating as much food as we give them, and we force feed them. And they don't have the time to really negotiate the chewing. The chewing is a lot more important than we've been led to think. And I'm a dentist. I know that chewing is important. I know that when you chew your food, you squeeze the parotid gland with the saliva, with the enzymes for digestion. I know all this. And even then, I heard the advice that was common in society, and I gave my kids mush, and I bypassed a lot of the important chewing in a very critical time in their life.
Yeah, it's weird. It's often the case, though, in science, that things that were fairly obvious get missed for a long time. And I have to admit that being an environmental scientist and evolutionist, the fact that it never really dawned on me that there are likely to be very big developmental issues going around with stopping eating tough foods, settling down in one place. For example, hadn't dawned on me that when you settle down in one place, you expose yourself to more allergens, because you're in an enclosed area, you're able to build a hut or something, and then the hut gets loaded with things like dust mites, and nowadays our huts are filled with formaldehyde, which wasn't there in the past. And so you get allergies, and one of the things that happens with allergies is that you get stuffy noses. And it turns out that nowadays Many children have stuffy noses for the first few years of their lives, especially if they go to a daycare center and there's not good sanitation practice to make sure that the allergies don't develop, or the kids that get stuffy nose get treated. Why would we care about stuffy noses? Well, Sandra will tell you about hanging jaws and what follows there, but